Over-the-top action, lock-on aiming, repeated animations, cheesy B-movie voice acting, and a plot to save the world. Gungrave GORE is a time portal back to the PlayStation 2 days of third-person shooters, a time before sad dad protagonists, time before microtransactions, DLC, seasons passes, and online multiplayer, time when games were often more arcadey than the titles of today, and had the simple goal of being a fun game. So is Gungrave GORE a fun game, or a retro throwback to a time better left forgotten? Let's find out. The story here is not the main feature, but the basic concept is that there's a drug called seed that turns its users into monsters. It's being sold by a corporation called Raven Clan in a city called Scumland. You and your team of friends decide to storm Scumland to stop its production and take the 4-leader bosses down. You do this by killing everyone and everything that leads you to Scumland. Never stop blowing things up. That's essentially the goal of this game. Basic gameplay systems include an auto fire, a manual fire mode, charge shots, grapple, a rage mode, melee combos, deflecting rockets. Some attacks are directly tied to your combo meter called beats in the game. You unlock these attacks through a skill tree as you play. For example, if you get above a 50 beat count, you can mash triangle to fire in a 360-degree circle, or jump and push triangle to smash into the ground, creating a shockwave that damages enemies. Keep hitting enemies and objects to keep your beat count constantly increasing. If you stand still for a second or two without blowing something up, it resets to 0. What this means is essentially that you want to be in a constant flow state, pushing forward toward your objective at all times, constantly on the lookout for any enemies, vehicles, vending machines, signage, barrels, anything that looks blow-upable to blow up. The top left up there, that is your HUD, and it shows a arrow pointing towards the next door, and you're going to want to kill all the enemies in each area because that's the only way the door opens. What this means is you want to finish killing all the enemies while you're very close to the door, so you can quickly walk through and shoot the next object or enemy in the doorway to keep your beat count up. Clear the room too far from the door, beat count reset. Got all that? It's a lot, and it's different from anything else I've personally ever played, but it's creative and fun. There's no collectibles of any sort to be found, so you're going to want to keep just pushing forward and avoid going into any areas that aren't where you need to go. Check out the top right of the HUD. That's your health and your shield. Health in red, shield in blue. Shields regenerate by standing still, which resets your beat count, or by not taking damage, good luck when you're getting swarmed by hundreds of enemies, or by walking up to a stunned enemy and absorbing him Doom 2016 style, or using special attacks. Speaking of special attacks, check out the bottom left of the HUD. Those are your special attacks. You start with just one, but there's dozens you can buy in the in-game store, which is all in-game currency, by the way, and you can assign 4 at a time. Using these will kill a ton of enemies at once and regenerate your shield, but they won't contribute anything to your beat count. You get a score at the end of each chapter. Your health, a general score called an art score, which is basically style, and your beat count are all taken into consideration and given separate ranks to come to an overall ranking, which gives you points to use in the lab. In the lab, you can purchase health, shields, and damage upgrades, as well as new combos, skills, and special attacks. Your shield is low. Do you risk it and keep shooting, raising your beat count to get a better beat score? Or do you use a special attack, killing all the enemies and raising your style score, but at the sacrifice of your beat combo? These are the decisions that you'll be making constantly while playing the game and aiming for an S rank. Sure, you can plow through the game with your brain shut off, holding R2 and just walking forward, but you aren't going to get a good score that way, and you definitely aren't going to have any fun. Play it properly, and this is a bloody fun game to run through. Play it like a standard third-person shooter, and you're going to have a bad time. Speaking of bad times, let's get into some of the issues with the game. First thing, you can't adjust the FOV, and it's an awful FOV. There's nothing I want more than to pull the camera back, but it just is not possible. And if a mod exists out there, I couldn't find it. Though it's been patched to death since launch, shader compilation stutter is still an issue on PC. They aren't particularly egregious, but if you're extra sensitive to it, then you might find it off-putting. Once each shader is loaded once, it's all smooth sailing. Environmental textures and enemy variety are honestly, in this situation, thankfully quite limited in each level, so the stutters do disappear after about a minute or two per chapter. But limited enemy variety is an issue. You'll be fighting melee enemies, large melee enemies, rocket launcher enemies that shoot 4 rockets at once, sniper enemies, and guys with shields that can't be broken by normal bullets. Each enemy type does take a bit of a different strategy to take out. For example, the shield guys, you'll need to use a special attack, a rage attack, a 2-hit melee attack, or deflect a rocket into them to break their shield. But with a campaign that lasts about 12 hours, it does get repetitive killing the same guys over and over. The levels are thankfully quite creative, giving you a different set of dressing to look at while you blast your way through each stage. Spanning a ton of biomes, including an abandoned city in Hong Kong, a Vietnam jungle, Cambodia, Malaysia, Singapore, and the game's made-up location Scumland, which is on an island in Southeast Asia. You'll be globe-trotting your way through surprisingly richly detailed levels that they never get repetitive. And at the end of each stage is a boss battle. So these are some of the best parts of the game, and it's the only time it ever deviates from the typical gameplay loop of just shoot, shoot, shoot. Bosses require a little bit of strategy to time and dodge their attacks at the right time, and just like the main game, they never feel unfair, as the challenge isn't necessarily don't die. It's get my beat count up, kill this guy, and leave my health as full as possible. The bosses typically come in 2 phases. One normal phase that can honestly usually be beaten by just strafing and shooting and dodging. Then a second phase where you'll most likely be wanting to keep your shield energized as much as possible.
I can keep them stable now. But there are no...
Voice acting is of the so bad it's funny variety. The acting talent and the microphone quality varies dramatically from person to person, as if the acting team was working from home and recording on a cell phone and then a studio. Conversations don't flow in a natural way in the slightest, but it has this charm to it, similar to that of a, well, it can't be PS2 action game. If cheesy voice acting isn't your cup of tea, don't go muting the volume though, because this soundtrack has no business going as hard as it does. It was done by Sunio Imahori, Devil May Cry soundtrack guy. Every world has its own song, and the quality never drops below a 10 out of 10. It's fast, upbeat, heavy, and makes you feel like an absolute monster while you're shredding hundreds of enemies. Gungrave GORE is a wicked throwback to the PS2 era of shooters. It's exhilarating getting your combo above a 50 or a 500 or a 1000 or 1500 and trying to stop it from resetting. It's chaotic, over the top, energetic, and frantic, in the same vein as Vanquish, Bayonetta, Earth Defense Force, or even Doom. You'll constantly be stressed out while simultaneously organized in your thoughts, keeping track of your health, your shield, your beat count, your special attack timer, the enemy types, the destructible objects on the battlefield. It's a fun 12-hour adventure that I can't recommend enough if you miss this genre of game. It definitely isn't for everyone, but if it sounds like it's for you, then it probably is. I'd recommend picking this up on sale to try out at the very least.
So